Hello. In today's video, we're going to talk about the artwork of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez in Charlton romance comics. Here are a few examples. First, we'll look at Love Diary number 67 from 1968. It's got the Garcia Lopez cover, which is taken from the splash page. It's a nice romance ad. This fantastic man. Oh, this girl, she's good looking, but she's always dreamed about the right guy to come along, but she's shy. I think that Garcia Lopez was really accomplished when he came to Charlton. This is one of the earlier stories that I have by him. And the artwork is really quite good. This girl, she just can't forget this guy, so she can't seem to make it with any guy that just keep breaking up, and she gets a bad reputation, or she thinks she has a bad reputation, and she's going to be an old maid. So she decides to head out west. On her way, she goes to a hotel and stops at a hotel and sees this guy by the pool, but wouldn't you know, she's got a girl. So she gets out west and she finds a nice place to live. And right away, this guy comes up to her, but she's like, oh, my makeup's all messed up. So she just kind of like blows him off. And she's like, oh, why did I do that? Guess I'm so shy. So the next day he's out by the pool waiting for her, and she's like, oh, I can't go down there. So she waits till it's almost dark, and then she goes out and she thinks nobody's there. And of course he's there waiting for her. And she's like, she's shy, and she's surprised, and she greets him, but she jumps right in the pool. It's good Charlton swimming art there. And she decides, well, I'll talk to him nicely when I get out. So she comes out, Mr. Coates, oh, he won't bother me again, she says with a tear. So she's writing in her diary about, her misery and how she likes this guy, but she ruined it with him. So they're having a party at the club room, and they invited her, and she's like, well, I'll go down there. And as she's going, she's like, oh, I didn't realize I had my diary. I got to put this in the car. So she goes and she sits in the car writing in her diary. Look at that lovely moonlight scene. Really nice artwork. So she's fantasizing in her diary about that guy she met. And then how she thinks it's gonna go. Then finally she puts it down, and the guy is like watching her from afar, and she puts down her diary and goes into the party. And then she meets up with him, and they start talking, and they break the ice. And then as they're dancing and having fun, I guess they got a live band at the party. So the guy takes her out in wait a minute, I gotta take you somewhere and show you something. And she's like, what is this? And he takes her out, and she's like, oh, this is the way I wrote it in my diary. And finally he kisses her. It's almost exactly like I imagined it would be. So she says, oh, this is just like I imagined it would be. She says, yes, I know all about it. I found your diary outside your car when you left. Oh, you didn't read my diary, did you? Oh, just the last 2 entries, just to see who I fell in love with. Oh, Terry, this time it's real. I can't fall in love on 2 kisses. You'd better kiss me again. Dear diary, the loneliness has ended. I'm where I belong, in the arms of the only man I'll ever love. The end. Next is Secret Romance number 7, which also has a Garcia Lopez cover. This story, An Eternity Without Love. So this guy brings his friend home from medical school named Jim, and introduces him to his sister Florence. And he says, well, he's from New Mexico and he's got a girlfriend, but go ahead and kiss him anyway under the mistletoe. And the family is like, oh, he's such a fine boy. This is a couple years later, and the art is still very good. It's not quite as lavish. I think maybe he feels like he's proved himself by now, but his layouts are very strong, and the illustration is wonderful. So they go out. They go ice skating, and she's going to be his date for the week while he's in town. And he tells her, oh, my father was killed. He was a missionary, and he was killed delivering supplies to the Navajo. And my mother died before that. And she's like, so on Christmas morning, she gets up early, and he's down there studying already. So she says, I'll make us breakfast, and we're not going to church until noon, then we can go out and take our sleds and go sledding. So it's like, okay. So they go, and I don't know, she's got a dog sled or something, I don't know, but it takes off, and he's on ice skates. I mean, it just seems weird, but maybe that's the way. I got a feeling that he's interpreting it differently than what the writer wrote. But she has a wreck, and he pulls her over. He pulls up to her and checks her out. No broken bones. You're okay. But for a moment, my heart almost stopped. So he checks her out, and she's okay. She says, oh, well, you can't get emotional about your patients. He says, oh, doctors feel things, Florence. So he helps her out, gets a little feel there. I'm so glad we're friends, Jimmy. And thank you for helping me. So she kisses him. Oh, that's my first fee, Florence. And one I'll always remember. And she's like, oh, he's going to be a doctor, and somebody else is going to be with him. Oh, so terrible. So she's like, oh, the time's up, you're going to take off, but be sure to write my parents and let us know how you are. I know you mean it, Florence. I'll miss you. So during the summer, she thinks about him, and he writes saying, her brother is back, and he's like ahead of him in class, I guess. And so now he says that Jim's alone in Boston at college. So she decides, well, I could get a job in Boston and just be his friend. His mother's like, you're crazy going up here and doing this for this guy when you should be looking for a husband for yourself. I know, Mother, I'm a fool. Now goodbye, and thanks for helping me get settled. So she calls up Jim. May I speak to Jim Gavin, please? Just all the little touches in the house, the lamp, the pillows. Very nice. So Jim is like, oh, Florence, this is fabulous. I was just thinking about that time we went sledding and you kissed me. So she's like, well, why don't you come over? I'll cook dinner. I know you got a lot of studying to do, so you can bring your books and study while I'm cooking. So they get together, and he studies while she reads the paper. So finally, she says, it's getting late. You want to have some coffee and pie before you leave? He's like, yeah, I want some of that pie. So they leave. Good night, my darling, she says, out of his hearing range. So she talks him into going to the beach. And so she starts asking him about this girl at home, and he's like hemming and hawing. And she's like, a girl can tell when a guy's in love with someone else, and you don't look at me like you're in love with someone else. He says, look, I've got enough troubles without starting a fight. If you think I'm a liar, I better leave. We came in my car, remember? And you're not going anywhere. You won't leave me, will you, Jimmy? Sweetheart, So finally he comes clean and tells her there's no girl. He's just like, he didn't think she'd want to be the wife of a missionary. It'd be a hard life. She's like, oh, I love you. Stop talking, darling. Kiss me. And so there they are, together at last, the end. And here's another Charlton Romance ad. Charlton Romance Comics, where the heart is. This next story is from Career Girl Romances, number 71 from 1972. It's called Stubborn Heart. And this girl, she falls in love with this guy, and she's 20 and he's a little older, and she's really in love with him, and things are going really well, she thinks. And will always be this way, my dearest. Yes, Eve, you know how I feel about you. There's a signature, Garcia Lopez, 1171. So one night they go to this play, and he's like distracted, and she's like, Peter, I thought it was hilarious. Is something wrong, Peter? Because I didn't laugh at the infantile humor, Eve. I'm tired. I'm taking you straight home. You certainly do seem upset, Peter. My cousin is here with his wife. I'll ride home with them. So that's like the end, and he breaks off, and she never sees him again until 6 years later, she sees him she's the executive secretary in this office, and she sees him, he's applying for a job. It's been a long time, Eve. I didn't think you'd remember me. You were my first beau. A girl doesn't forget that. I suppose not, Eve. And I got a cane. I applied for his job here, but I suppose I'll be turned down. I'll call you, Peter, as soon as I know. You left a phone number, haven't you? And he's like, oh, don't bother. They can let me know by mail that they're turning me down. And her boss comes out. Too bad, he's almost perfect for the job. Does it mean you don't want him because he has a cane? Of course not. It's just his attitude. Probably because of the cane. Mr. Osborne, I've never done this before, but please give Peter that job. We did go together a long time ago, but Peter's probably married by now. Very nice backgrounds, the urban, from the office to the urban center, back to the office. Very nice. Good telephone art. Wow. Have you ever seen a phone like that? So she goes, she gets a letter saying that he's hired, and she goes to see where he lives. And he lives in this rooming house in a bad part of town. He's like, oh, she can't be married to live there. So at last Peter comes in. So it's like 4 days after he gets the letter, before he comes into work. He comes in the office and he asks to see her. Even if it'll make you uncomfortable to work in the same office, I won't mind, Peter. I don't hate you. And so Peter comes to work in the office, and he does really well. And Mr. Osborne, the boss, thinks he's really great. What happened to you, Peter? You just dropped out of sight for 6 years. What happened? I guess it must have seemed strange, Eve. But so don't worry. He's like, where am I? Oh, so Peter asked her to type a report that's like changes that it's like really drastic and will change things up for the company. And she's like, well, if you do this, they might fire you. She says, well, it doesn't matter. You won't be affected. If you have to leave, I think I'll die over again, thinks Eve. He's got courage. So the boss looks at the plan and he says, wow, this is really great. I think we're going to try it. And so Peter tells her a little bit about his past. How he had a leg infection and they thought he were going to have to amputate his leg. Let's talk in here. So he tells her all the story, and she's like, you think I wouldn't have stood by you? Do you mean you love me even the way I am? The way you are is perfect, Peter. Mr. Osborne thinks you're wonderful, and so do I. This is the most wonderful day of my life. Kiss, kiss, the end. And finally, we come to I Love You, number 95 from 1972. It's a wonderful cover, isn't it? Signed Garcia Lopez. Emancipated Amanda. Look at that panel. Isn't that cool? She's in high school and she's like a real swinger. All the boys want to date her. And she's like, wow, this is really great. It's going to be even better when I get to college. So she gets to college. Immediately the guys are hitting her up. Hey, meet me at the burger place in half an hour. She says, well, maybe I'll try. So she runs upstairs, finds her room. She's hoping she's got a good roommate, and she meets her roommate, And she says, oh, well, I've got to hurry. I've got a date with this cat. And she's like, I feel sorry for you, Amanda. She says, you feel sorry for me? What, Dorothy? What kind of crack is that? Oh, nothing, Amanda. You're just a casualty in the war of the sexes. You're putting me on. I'm not a casualty. I'm only going to a hamburger with this cat. So she goes and she's dates the football players, and she thinks she's having a great time. But Dorothy's there telling her, you know, hey, look, you know, you're acting crazy. And so after the game, he's like, oh, Amanda, I was thinking about you when I made that touchdown. And she's like, oh, yeah, you're lying, but I love it. He's like, oh, I'm mad about you, Amanda. You're the living end. So he goes off, and she's like, So then a half hour later, while Amanda is rapping with some kids outside, she happens to look into the shadows, and Dan is with another girl. How could he? Yeah, Garcia Lopez, he's quite an artist. Now, do you see what I mean? Dan doesn't treat you like an equal. You're only a woman. Dorothy, this time there's no more nonsense. She says, you should wear those ridiculous styles. You're making yourself attractive to women, but you're just a sex symbol. So she tells him all, she lays it out for him, and she decides she's gonna try to be more of a woman's liber. So the next day she wears sports clothes, and they blow off the attentions of the guys. And so they're having this woman's road rally, and this guy comes up, hey, I'm from such and such a magazine, and he's talking to her. And Dorothy notices the guy he's with, and she's like, did you notice that other guy? And so back at the room, she's like, you think I'll ever gain weight? Think I'll always be so skinny? I don't know, Dorothy. What does it matter? And Dorothy's like, no woman wants to look absolutely hideous. Dorothy keeps mentioning Godwin and that beanpole he was with. I wonder. So she calls him up, the guy at the magazine, Godwin, and she kind of talks him into coming to a meeting, talk about the article. And so they all hit it off, and they decide to go out on it. And she's like, you know, why can't women ask men for a date? And he's like, oh, are you asking me out? Well, if she's interested, why not? So the two girls ask the guys for a date, and they decide to go out. So they go, and Dorothy gets dressed to the nines, and Amanda's all dressed up, and they go to the beach. And nature takes its course with both couples. So the next day, she's like, oh, Amanda, you don't have to throw away those jeans. You know, you can wear them for going to the beach or doing work around the house. She's like, I'll be getting tighter fitting ones than these. The end. So much for woman's lib, I guess. Well, that's my look at the Charlton artwork of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. If you like this video, then like it. And be sure to make a comment or subscribe if you feel like it. Enjoy.